Hey guys, it's Super here. So today let's talk about presets and how to make presets, the different settings, and when you should be using them. So if you don't know, we can just go to any battle in the game, and when you are selecting your heroes, you can see you can select a preset lineup over here. So some people already use this. This is pretty common for most players. You can set your different teams, but the preset part which I want to talk about specifically is the special instructions or commands that you apply to your characters when you need them. So this is especially important for PvP content areas like Arena and Advanced Arena, where you want specific skills to be used specific number of times. And to first decide how you should set up your preset, you first need to understand what your characters do. So let's take a quick look at one random piece of content. So it doesn't really matter. So for example, let's take a look at, well actually Revenant, I can't even do it there because I maxed out my fights there. I did 30 levels today, but we can take a look at something like Wuthering Coast, and doesn't matter what buff we pick. What I want to show is that every single character has different priorities built in by the developers as to which skills they will use first. So let's just put a bunch of random characters, or these two are just fine. And what I want to show you is that every character, based on how the developers have coded it, prioritize using different skills. So you can see Apsara's Special 4 skill is the one which does damage record, right? And the Special 2 skill is the one which does damage. And then for Murungjing, the Special 4 skill is the one which does damage, and the Special 2 is the shield. So let's take a look over here. When we use auto with no preset, what happens? So it uses Apsara's Special 2, which shows that the game doesn't just prioritize using the highest or strongest skill, rather it depends from character to character. In Apsara's case, the game prioritizes using her Special 2 first, and then for Murungjing, it uses Special 4 first, which for most characters is the case where it uses the Special 4 skill. But I just want to show you that there are exceptions. There are also some more unique ones. For example, we have Dianmu Indra, right? Dianmu, I believe, converts to his second form only when the enemy has around 7 or 8 stacks. Before that, he will basically just only use his basic attack, and Indra, unless you specifically program him to, he will never use his Special 4 on his own. So just showing you different examples of characters using different skills based on what character it is, and it's not always prioritizing the last skill. And this is important because in the Apsara example especially, in basically every single instance, of course there are some exceptions, some players do decide to do the opposite when it comes to PvP, but for almost every instance, you want to start the fight with your Special 4 over here. And since Apsara doesn't do that and always prioritizes her Special 2 when it's available, this can cause some issues, and this is one good example for why we need presets. So let's talk about how you do it and the different settings. So first of all, you should of course choose the team that you want, right? So for example, we can choose a pretty standard team that you can run with Marie, so maybe something like this, and then maybe just like a Felicia to round out the team. So let's say you have these 5 heroes, and of course it can be any 5 heroes that you want, and it can in fact even be less than 5 heroes, it can be any number. But once you have a team that you want to first of all save your preset, right? And then once you save it, you can name it if you wish to. So you can name it video preset, for example, since I'm using this for the video. And you can see it changes the name here. And then the only other real important things you need to know before we get into this, into manually controlling the functions, is if you want to create a preset, or you want to change a character from a preset, rather than having to create a new one entirely, you can just simply change and swap out the characters over here. So for instance, we can add our Spirit Beast, right? And then just confirm, and the changes will be made. Of course, you can change the order of your preset, so I can move this up, I can move this down, and you can delete it. So pretty straightforward. This one just shows you the different presets that you have. So we have Wuthering Coast over here, which is where I'm doing it. And then you can apply it into other areas of content if you wish. So let's say you have like a preset made for Classic Arena, and you use the exact same team in Advanced Arena, you can just select the ones where you want it to be added. But anyway, now let's focus at the main part, and that's this controller icon over here. So when you click into it, there are several things you can do. Of course, you get a pretty a pretty thorough overview of your character as a whole. And first off, before we get to the skills, you can see that you can change between basically everything. You can select different auras, and this aura will basically only be applied when you run this preset in particular. So for instance, in the hero screen, I have versatility aura applied by default, but if you want to make exceptions for certain presets, certain areas of content, you can select the alternate aura that you may choose. This is pretty niche. Most of the time you wouldn't be doing this, but of course, it's just an option that is available when necessary. So let's change it back. And if you have multiple emblem pages over here, you can also see that you can swap between them as you desire. In this case, I have two presets where one has the speed talent for Marie, so in case I need to win some speed ties, I can toggle between them. But once again, it defaults to the one you have active in your hero page. So now you just let's focus on the actual main part. So you can see whenever you click on any of the following skills, besides the passive, a menu of things will show up. And let's go through the main ones that you will use. So the one that you will use most commonly is definitely this one, preferred. And that just means it will always use the skill when available, as you can see. And so in the instance earlier where I showed that whenever Apsara is able to use her special 2, she uses it, where we'd much rather use her special 4, then in this case we can just simply set her special 4 to the preferred one, and that will just always use it as long as it's available. You can also see that there are other ones, there are many other functions, so we also have this secondary one, always use this skill when the preferred skill is unavailable. Personally, I don't use this that much. I don't think there's that many use cases for it, because most of the time, if let's say there's a skill you don't want to use, so one which comes to mind is her zone just special 2, which is pretty bad and you don't want to use, rather than setting like the special 4 as primary and then maybe the basic attack as secondary, you can just outright ban the skill completely, which is another function that you can use as well. So there are some characters which use this. I believe characters like Rister, you would usually want to ban his special 4, or like I said, Hozondra, you want to ban his special 2. There are several others, and of course it depends from scenario, case by case. Some places where you may want to use this, but just letting you know that this is an option. Of course, you can always sort things back to default. Then we have this alternative one. So you can see always use this skill when the preferred and the secondary skill are unavailable. So this I feel is really, really niche. You will essentially never use this, and that's because if you are setting two skills, one as primary and one as secondary, then by default, if both are unavailable, then it will use the third remaining one, right? So there isn't really any use case that I can think of where you will have to use this alternative one. It's a little redundant. And then finally, well, there's two more. There's this one which is starter. This one's also pretty useful, which you may use once in a while. So for example, in PvP content, I do like to use, or PvE content, I do like to use my shielders, or as I like to give the skills for shields for my characters this starter tag. So I think in most instances, the shield ability is usually used by default as a starter, but I think there are some exceptions for specific characters. Another instance where I like to use the starter, or I interchange starter and preferred, is Murongjing. So Murongjing on his exclusive 2 will cast his special 2 at the start of the wave. So maybe it's best if I show you guys. Let's find like a preset with Murongjing used. Okay, whatever. So let's just create it, right? So let's put like Murongjing into the team, and then you can see Murongjing's special 2 is cast when he has exclusive 2 at the start of wave, but it only lasts for 2 turns. So yeah, over here, it lasts for 2 turns, and this skill itself lasts for 4 turns if he uses it manually. So by default, Murongjing attacks starting with his special 4, and personally I'm not a fan of that, because in a team which is used alongside Apsara, for example, Apsara very easily takes 2 turns before Murongjing is ever able to use his special 2, given that you don't set a preset. So what I like to do is, in PvP content, if I don't choose preferred, I choose starter, and that means I always start the fight with Murongjing special 2, so I have 4 turn coverage for his damage reduction from that skill. So you can see that there are these very little niche scenarios that you have to think about when it comes to creating these presets. And lastly, we have this one, which is attempts, and you can see that it will be used, you can use however many times you want before you can no longer use it. So I find this useful when it comes to content which has multiple waves. So for example, okay, let's delete this preset, and actually let's delete this previous one we made as well, and let's go to dungeons now. So dungeons at the higher levels, or in fact in all levels, there are 3 waves, right? But at the higher levels, you may not necessarily be able to clear each wave in one go. And this creates a problem because if, let's say, using Irato's Special 4 doesn't wipe the wave in one shot, and then your ally heroes without a preset starts using their shield, then if you get unlucky with the way the fight goes, when you transition from wave 1 to wave 2, it's possible that your shield skills may be down, and that means you're not able to use them, and then because you don't have the shield, your team gets killed by the second wave. Or similarly, when you transition from the second wave to the third wave, you may not have your skill cooldowns if the fight takes too long, and then you get wiped in the first turn of the boss, right? So the solution for this sort of scenarios is to set a preset, right? And you can see that you can set specific presets for wave 1, 2, and 3. So generally for the scenario that I mentioned above, this will apply to wave 1 and 2. And what I would do is maybe something like I'll set the shield skill, which is this one, to maybe be used once before being banned. Or in some cases, maybe you have 2 shielders, let's say you have Nikolith and Nordek, for example. So, but in this case, let's just use Moronjing. And let's say this is the skill I want to make sure I have up for the next wave, right? And I know that for wave 1, using Nikolith's shield alone is enough for survivability. Then maybe for wave 1, I can, like I said, I can set this to 1 attempt, which means that this skill will be used once and then never again for this wave. And then for this one, I can just ban the shielding skill entirely, so that in the second wave, I am definitely going to have this one up. So this time in wave 2, I can set this shield as available to use. And for Nikolith's one, I will ban it so that even if the cooldown comes back up, I can choose not to use it and save it for the third wave. So you shouldn't just copy me and say like use it once and ban the other and vice versa. You have to kind of do the fight manually and analyze how the fight is going, and from there decide how many times do I need to use my corresponding shield skills before I no longer want to use it. So if the fight goes really long, maybe you have to use the shield like 3 times, and then on the third time you will deal enough damage to not only get the cooldown of your skill back, but to survive, right? So of course, this really just depends on how the fight goes, and you have to make this decision individually. Sometimes you don't even need to use this number option. You can simply just use the starter option and then ban the alternative one. So it really, once again, it really depends. Yeah, so that's really all we have for today. Just a quick one, and I think this is something which many new players overlook and don't really consider. And it's a really important part of the game, especially when it comes to actually basically every area of content. And when you have characters like Apsara who almost always require you to set a preset, then this becomes really, really important. So I hope this was useful for you guys, and I'll see you guys next time.